soldiers. That's close to the base, you know, it would be.
So they were afraid of an attack on the west coast then?
Yeah, yeah, the west coast was watched very closely.
Didn't they have a Navy base at Oak Harbor?
Just, yes, there, a lot of the boys were trained there, you know.
You're telling me about Grandpa Melvin's mother, Serena, and how she was staying here. And then she was real sick, and then you had to take her to the hospital. Was that the hospital in Anacortes then?
Yes.
Yeah.
And when she was well enough so she could go home, she didn't come back here. Then the doctor said he'd see to it that they get a room ready at Barth's home.
Oh.
And that was the first one she went in.
Well, how long was she in the Barth home? Or?
Well, she was in a nursing home, I think, about a year before she passed away.
I wonder how old she was. Do you remember about?
Well, she must have been close to 80, I think.
Really? Wow.
It must have been about 80 years. I just don't recall what year she passed away. I know she was born in 1964. Mother and her were about the same age.
You mean 1864?
Yes, 18. 18, I think Mom was born in 1860, earlier than 64. I don't just remember exactly the year. There was a time it did, but I forget now.
Mm.
It's,
After Grandpa, getting back to Grandpa's, was working down around Olympia, and then he was going to help some people start up a plywood mill. I remember that you were talking about starting one out at Port Angeles, but then instead they ended up coming to Anacortes to start.
You mean in plywood?
The plywood was called Anacortes Veneer that they started.
Yes.
And what was Grandpa's position? What did he do for them when he worked there?
Oh, at first?
Yeah.
Labor just like the rest of them. About a year. Worked in 3 shifts.
Was that an American-owned company then?
Oh yes, it's all just working men, plywood, retired plywood. And a lot of people from out of state. We had a lot of people from Dakota that come out.
Who were the original owners that had the money to start it though?
Well, there was an old mill that closed down here, and they paid down. Most of those men, or many of them, had jobs throughout the Depression in plywood plants. And of course they realized what good business it was, and they said, why not own our own? And it was just a co-op, and it was organized right, and they got good honest men that are in there that started the business. That's the important thing.
And I remember there's a house right in a commercial. Was that the first house, or did you live somewhere else before?
No, we lived out on Oaks Avenue, up above where the big boat is tied down below the fish canneries.
Is that house still there?
Yes. Yes, it's there.
And then Dad must have. How old was Ken? Was he?
Well, it was 40. We came there at 40, so that'd be 12.
Oh, so he was old enough to go to school and everything. He was like a teenager.
28.
Teenager, yeah.
And yeah, that's still there, but I think there was a fire there, and I think there's been an addition built to it since.
Were you living out there when Ken met Carolyn?
No, I think we were living out on Oaks Avenue then.
You mean at Oaks or commercial?
Yes. I don't think that Carolyn was ever out of Oaks Avenue.
So a commercial.
We must have just lived there a little more than a year, you know. And that other place, we must have lived in there about 8 years or something like that.
Because he was a teenager when he met Carolyn, so.
Oh yes, just 14, 15 or 14.
Did they meet at the junior high school?
Yeah, in school, because
Is it?
he came home one day and says, "Ma, I met my wife today." His first day, he had two. There was a girl from going to school from Idaho, and she was it all too, you know. Just a really nice little gal. And then Carolyn was next. And they're a lot alike, you know. She was a sweetheart too, you know. Carolyn was. She was different. She's different than her sisters. There's some likeness, but she's different. The other ones are likeness between them, but there isn't between Carolyn and her. And of course, you don't want to tell anybody that, but I think she's the prettiest one of the girls. Her features.
Okay, you were talking about how Ken and Carolyn met. Where did they meet each other?
Well, it was during the war, and Carolyn's dad was transferred to this area, and the family came later. And when she entered school, why, Kenneth met her then. And the first day he saw her, he came home and he said, "Mom, I met my future wife today."
What did you think?
Well, I just laughed about it. That's kids for you. But they got acquainted and they're still married and happy. So young minds are sometimes a lot better than old minds when they pick out a mate.
Maybe he's a little bit stubborn, eh?
Mm.
So did Ken and Carolyn start dating right after that, or?
Well, yes, they started going together quite. Of course, it was not really steady, you know, serious, but they evidently knew what they wanted, or who they wanted.
So when did they get married?
I just can't say. It was on our 25th wedding anniversary, is all I remember.
Right after high school?
Uh-huh.
Right out of high school then?
Yes.
So that was that after the World War II? They got married after?
Yes, it must have been. Yes.
So none of your, Melvin or Kenneth or none of them had to go into the war, or?
No.
Dismissed it?
We were fortunate. I don't think that none of the Melvin brothers went to war either. They were about the same age as my brothers, and they didn't get to the war either.
What happened in Anacortes around during the war? Did it affect the people in Anacortes much?
Oh yes, we had to darken our windows, and we had different things that was required of us. And of course, there were no women idle. Everybody was involved in some kind of work.
Did you darken the windows all the time, or were there certain times, or how did you know?
Well, I just don't know exactly how long before the war was over before.
So you just would darken them at nighttime, or?
Oh yes, just in the evenings when it was dark. And they're very particular too. There couldn't be any cracks where the light would shine through around a shade or anything like that. Some of them painted their windows, but the disadvantage there was they would be black or dark all the time. But they were very particular about that.
Did they use any of the areas around here, like Fort Casey, during the war, or?
Oh yes, and then they had a lot of these places along the shores where, I just don't recall what they were, but there are people stationed in each one. And
lookouts or something?
yes. Mm-hmm.
What did they think might happen? What were they afraid of?
Well, they were just afraid of people sneaking in, unnoticed. Or else they watch them quite closely. In fact, some Japs did get into Oregon. I think that we noticed those same places on Kodiak Island, on the shores too. I suppose wherever they were soldiers, that's close to the base, to Whitby.
So they were afraid of an attack on the west coast then?
Yeah, yeah, the West Coast was watched very closely.
Didn't they have a Navy base at Oak Harbor?
Just, yes, there a lot of the boys were trained there.
So Kenneth
And
was,
that was made into a base so quick. They can move a lot and do a lot in a short while if they have to.
so Kenneth was too young to go.
Well, Kenneth worked on the base, doing different odd jobs. Of course, he wasn't of age yet. But they had a lot of errands where the young boys that were going to high school would go with older people to either take them to their work, and then they had their bosses after they're on there, but it had nothing to do with the Army. It's just the odd job that they could do on the base. That is, they weren't trained for any Army duty. And of course, the boys at that age, all the boys wanted to wear those white sailor caps. And then finally they got so they wouldn't be told the boys that they shouldn't wear anything that really was dressed, if you were dressed too much like a sailor.
No, they might pick you up and take you away.
I suppose.
So at this time, Grandpa Melvin was in the plywood mill.
Yes.
And was the mill pretty busy then during the war?
Oh yes. Of course, there was demand for plywood then. Building that was. The plywood really never was idle any time. Their plywood was always in demand. It's a pretty handy material to have, I guess.
Didn't Melvin come to work in the office?
No. No, he was a stockholder, and they just had to take what they could get when they came. And he went right down to the mill and worked there for a while.
But sometime later, didn't he end up working in the office at the mill?
Yes, the office, of course they always had a lawyer, and then a manager, and they picked out the men that they wanted if there was a vacancy or someone failed their job or something. And he was dry. He didn't work down the mill very long.
So how long was he secretary of the plywood mill?
Oh, it must have been about 25 years, I think. Yeah.
And what did you do all this time when he was working in the mill?
Well, I didn't do a thing. I just sat around. Well, I don't know. We were busy. We treated the boys a lot. They fixed the city hall for a place for the boys. They didn't have no place to come and relax, or when they come to town, or they could meet other sailors. And quite a few of the women, and they had no money to buy any refreshments or anything like that. And the women made whatever, they usually cookies and coffee, and we'd serve that every day for during the busy hours. And then of course there's so many women started doing the men's work, especially shipbuilders. A lot of women left town and worked in shipbuilding places. And the women were very busy. And that's what changed the women's natures, and I think that's why the children have the trouble they have nowadays.
Did some of the ships...
Too many mother left her homes and they neglected the youngsters. I think that's where the trouble started.
Did they dock in town in Anacortes?
No, no. The largest shipbuilding yard was in Portland. A real large one there.
Was there anything at Bremerton at the time?
Well, I said that they have a regular base there, you know, a regular harbor there for the boats, but building, I don't know what I suppose, it really, I think that the base in Bremerton is really more for maintenance. Now, I'm not sure about that. I should know about it by this time, but well, they did have shipbuilding too because Melvin's cousin worked there. She and her husband both, as long as they were out here. She was an electrician, I know. And he did some other kind of work, and that was building, that must have been building boats.
You were active in some other clubs too. What were those?
Well, I was active in a women's club and a garden club. And then the ladies had a club, the wives of the men of the plywood. We had quite an active club. But otherwise, there were so many civic jobs that we had to do beyond drives and, well, just a lot of little errands that the men would do if they had the time, but the women took over. And a lot of them did men's work. And during the World War, the women, they really worked just like men. That's where our daylight saving hour come into effect, was to make the days longer. It took the women out of the indoor jobs, and especially the office work, and left them out an hour earlier in the evening so they get that extra hour after work, so they could either work early in the morning or later at night after their regular shifts. All the women were not shocking. The grain and well, they did most of the work that a man could do on a farm.
Do you remember when they built Coslin Park down in Anacortes?
Oh, that was there before we came, because that was built after the First World War.
That was First World War?
Yes.
And how about when they built Memorial Highway and lined it with the trees? When was that done? Was that...
You mean, I think that must have been, that was here
there?
before we came, yes.
That must have been
That's
First
in
World
memory
War?
of the First World War. See, that's quite a while ago, too.
Were there any monuments built after World War II in the area?
Here in Anacortes?
Yeah.
I don't know of any. There probably are some plaques or something, you know, but no monuments.
Not like World War I?
No. The only monument I know is the one that's in memory of the fishermen in Anacortes here. But I guess there's going to be another one going up. But I don't know, I suppose it isn't put up there, I think, more for tourists, for some attraction. Because I've never really heard just who what it would represent, or what class of people or anything. Just supposed to be a pretty monument that you can see a long distance. And it kind of brings the attention to Cap Santa.
Didn't you belong to a garden club?
Pardon?
Did you belong to a garden club?
Oh yes, I've belonged to 2 of them.
What did they do? Did they, was it for plants, or didn't they have some other civic purpose?
Well, the South Side Garden Club really was more down-to-earth dirt work. We worked, you know, did everything pertaining to plants. And we had always raising unusual flowers and having flower shows and things like that. But the Town Country Club, our project was seeing eye dogs. And we managed to get a set once a year. The seeing eye dog, and that dog was taken by someone in a home and take good care of a dog and train a dog. And when about a year training, it was assigned to a blind person. And that blind person and the dog was sent to school in California for 3 months. And they were trained together. And after they passed the test, but then they were given insurance and protection for the dog the rest of his life. And we got one a year, and we must have gotten about 15, I think, or so, seeing eye dogs.
After you lived on the end of Commercial, then you moved out to March's Point. You bought some property out there?
Oh, after we were here, and then of course about eight years or so, probably 10 years, we bought some property out on the point, and the men folks start clearing the property to build homes, and there's quite a few homes built right out on the point. And unbeknown to us, an oil company came in and bought that property behind us, you know, and of course, when they put in a refinery like that, there's no one going to live right next door to them. So they bought the homes from the people that built the homes there. One got through and then another one came in, so they bought up the property quite closely.
Didn't have much choice to move, did you?
No, because there is no other location that's more beautiful and gives more of the scenery around than right out on the point. But of course, they didn't allow anything for that. They wanted the location because of the depth of the water there. So, but they were fair, though. The Texaco was really helped the people that they to buy new locations, because they all had to sell their homes, you know. But Shell, they both were.
Didn't the refineries help to build Fidalgo Elementary School or have something to do with it?
No, I think that the school did wonderful things for the refineries. But of course, the building wasn't much good, and they wouldn't have the kind of school that they have now if the refinery didn't come in.
I thought maybe they put a road in or something out in this area.
Oh, well, yes, this road that comes out past the schoolhouse now, that was all rebuilt because they had so much heavy trucking on that road, and they had to put in a better road.
Were they using the road for from a gravel pit to the refinery?
Mm-hmm. Well, they used the road for, they had a heavy machinery to haul, and we didn't have much of a highway coming into Anacortes then. In fact, the one going into Anacortes from the point that turns off the refinery, that was just a winding road, narrow and not at all. It was a good solid road, but it wasn't very nice to drive on, and of course the traffic was so much thicker there. The war, you know, brought in an awful lot of freight and take out freight from the dock, so they had to improve the roads.
That was about the time that Ken owned that Studebaker. What kind of car did you have? when you were out on the Marches Point, do you remember?
I think that we bought the Oldsmobile during the war, but before that we had an old Buick.
When was it that you bought the brown Cadillac then? Is that after that?
Oh,
Was it reddish brown Cadillac?
no, well, I don't know what color the Cadillac was. We bought the Cadillac after we were on
Marches Point.
Marches Point.
Because I remember that you had it when you moved into the house out here at Gibraltar.
No, we had it before that.
Yeah, but I mean, you brought it
Yeah.
over here with you.
Didn't have much time though to enjoy it while we were on the point because we were there such a short time. We were just on that point about 4 years. And that's a very short time considering the house we had and the work we put into it.
And Ken built a house right next door, right?
Yes,
How did you decide on the property that you're going to buy next? How did you decide where to move to?
Well, you and Kenneth had this place. In fact, I think you had bought it already. No, you plant. Well, it's just
Carolyn and Kenneth.
It was through you folks that we knew you had a place here, but we went down on not Milk, what's that beach down there?
Dewey?
Yeah, Dewey, and looked at a place there, and after we almost decided to buy that place, but just before we left, the salesman told us that they had some wonderful springs up on the hillside. We never have to buy water for a green lawn, and he made his speech was quite promising. But when Mel heard that they had springs and they had to oversupply water and couldn't find a place to drain it, well then Mel said he just didn't want, he just couldn't see that that'd be satisfactory. So we came further down the beach and come to the place here. And Melvin saw it, and he liked it. He thought it was a very nice location, and he just closed the deal there. In downtown Memphis. Now, Ken and Carolyn wanted this place here. Now, whether you plan on making it a lot larger or if you were just thinking about buying your place in, but you had your place before Mel bought this one.
How come you decided to build your house out of a brick house instead of like the one out on the point? Did Melvin decide that?
To
build a different brick house here, yeah.
Yes. He always liked, well, I suppose probably Herman kind of got him interested in that too, but he always liked a brick house. There were just very few, we just remember 3 or 4 brick homes at home in Cooperstown or in Griggs County. And he always liked that. And when we came here and he decided to build, then the architect that he went to was showing different plans, and when Melvin said that he wanted a brick construction, the architect says, brick construction? He said, you're a plywood man. And a little more talking, Mel kind of thought that way. So he satisfied both parties. It was part brick and part plywood. But it was good construction. We had 2 nice fireplaces in it, and concrete floor, and it was well constructed. That house was moved near the Connor later, and they didn't even take down the chimneys. They left the fireplaces just as they were. Loaded the house on a raft and pulled it over there and put it up on the beach. And
why did Melvin decide to build that 2-story house on the hillside on Gibraltar?
with this one here,
Mm-hmm.
Well, I suppose because of space and because of the formation of the hills or bank.
Was he building it for you or for someone else, or
Oh,
why?
no, he really built it for ourselves because he decided that we'd better just look forward to the future and get something a little easier to live on and maintain. But then he put up this place for sale, and well, he had probably for sale for about a year, but once in a while someone would come. They didn't have the money in California then like they have now. And we were planning to go on a trip. So just the night before we were ready to leave on a trip, a couple came in and saw the place and they wanted to buy it right then.
Okay, you're gonna tell me about that couple that came in?
Well, and Melvin just told them that we just decided that we would stay in the house here, down here. And he said that there's our family, you know, and someone in our family that could enjoy that house there. And we just stayed here, we didn't sell. But at first, when he had the idea that he'd like to have something that's smaller and easier to maintain, why, he expected us to live there when we retired. So, but so happy.
But if you wanted a house that was easier to take care of, the house on the hill is a pretty big house with 2 stories. Why did you think that'd be easier to take care of than this one, or was that
Well,
the reason?
That's limited. The shoes that people are wearing now, different colors and styles.
Okay, Grandma, you're telling me about the house up on the hill here in Gibraltar that Grandpa helped make, and you were going to live in it yourself, but then you decided just to stay in the house on the beach?
Well, that's what we said. We said that already, I think. Well, now, what should I go on?
Then who ended up living in the house
Oh.
that Grandpa built up there?
Then later, Kenny and Carolyn bought the house, and finally now they are living here in the our original home, and Kathy, Ben, and their family are living in the house. It's still in the family.
And you said Ken and Carolyn are living in the brick home on the beach here at Gibraltar with you now.
Yeah, I think I said it was
Yeah.
the original home that you're living in.
Do you want to tell me how Ken wanted to get in fishing? He'd been working at the plied mill, but he wanted to get into fishing. Can you tell me how you and Melvin helped Ken get into the fishing business?
Well, really, we just didn't help him by, he had to have a certain payment, and he didn't have enough cash to make it, and Dad just loaned it to him. It's really all that he had to do with it.
And you were telling me about how did Melvin get that money? You told me that he didn't have the cash on hand at the time, so what did he have to do?
Oh, you mean, well, he hadn't, he had just completed paying for this home, and now he was accumulating cash. And it was just, this home he he probably had a payment or so left on that. But this home was practically paid for, because they told me he could have any amount of money that Kenneth needed for the boat.
So did Grandpa have to go get a loan at the bank then?
No, he just gave a loan on this house. That was the cash.
Mortgage on this house?
Yes.
I see. And what did Grandpa want Ken to do? Did he want him to go into fishing, or?
Well, he would he didn't object. He just decided what Kenneth wanted to do. That's about the best thing for him to do if he wanted to be happy, you know, and be successful and make a living for his family.
Did Melvin think it was, or did you think it was strange that Ken wanted to go into fishing since no one in the family was a fisherman?
Well, no, Melvin was interested in fishing himself as far as that goes, but not to make a living in it. And Alfred was very interested. He had to know everything that Kenny, every time that Melvin would get a letter from Kenneth or a call. Why, Alfred had to be, he had to know, you know, and he was interested in it. And whenever his cousins would come around, he'd be telling them about Kenneth's fishing and how much he caught and things like that. That's what he really thought about the last years of his life, Alfred. He was interested in this fishing. It was, to him, it was fascinating.
Ken and Carolyn, when they had their family, they always lived just next door to you, and so you were always around when the kids were growing up. What kind of relationship did you have there with the kids when they were growing up?
A lot of fun. They'd come to the house, yes. They were just a bunch of lively youngsters was all, and I was, well, and they were good kids, just peppy kids.
Did you do a lot of babysitting?
No, Carolyn was very independent that way. She never would say, well, she won't go someplace, well, Grandma will take care of the kids. No, she was very independent that way. And still, she herself, she wants to take care of her grandchild, you know, any excuse she has. But no, except much, she never imposed on anyone with the children. She took care of them herself, kept them clean and happy, so.
What were some of your and Melvin's favorite trips? Did you go anywhere?
No, our favorite trips was when we were out here that we'd go back home. And then, of course, to the islands. I went there 2 times, and of course I enjoyed that very much. But I don't know, what made it nice was both of our families lived in the same area. So, you know, we got to see both families at the same time, and perhaps more often if we had to go a separate place on a separate trip, because if we had one trip a year, why, that was all we could have.
Yeah, I remember when you used to pack up, and you'd take weeks to pack up, and then you'd leave and go to North Dakota for a couple of weeks. And yeah. I remember the grandkids watering your flowers all the time you were gone.
Yeah, it was always a 2-week trip that
usually in the summer.
And that was usually in August. Ed and I spent our birthdays quite a few times after we lived out here, back home.
And then you mentioned going to Hawaii. When was that? With the islands, was that Hawaii you're talking? Mm-hmm. You went 2 times?
Yes. One time when Kenneth and Carolyn came home from Kodiak. That's when their family was living in Kodiak. And that was when Serena was so ill.
That first 76.
Yeah, and that was the last surgery she had, was just a day or 2 before we came home from that trip. And that's when she suddenly just changed to hopeful. She just changed her suddenly to improving. And then the other time was I went in December and spent 2 weeks there with Patty's mother in that Twin Tower. And that was a very nice trip, but it was a poor time of the year. Christmas in Hawaii, you know, hot weather and that sparkly tint fall.
How about a trip that you and Melvin made to go to Kodiak?
Oh, that was fun. I think that was the only trip that Melvin made. He didn't make 2 trips, did he? I don't remember one trip. I made several trips to Kodiak, but he just made one trip. You remember that time when that lady came and offered him a drink there in the tavern? He said, what should I do with that?
Oh.
Well, I tell you, I think we were pretty green when it comes to drinks. That's one thing I can say, he didn't drink. It's very important.
Did he ever go to like Disneyland or anywhere?
Not Melbourne. I think you folks took me to Disneyland. That was a very interesting trip. But I enjoyed it, but I never, Melvin never went any place if I wasn't there and couldn't go with him. And I never went out without Melvin. I don't know why. It was part of our going out. We enjoyed it if we could both go, but if one would go on a trip just for enjoyment, we never did that.
Did either one of you have hobbies?
Well, Melvin's hobby was his reading or writing or his schoolwork. He always had things to do. And he liked to meddle with wood like that trade, that he made a thing like that, but he never had, I suppose he'd taken time, but he preferred books. And me, I didn't have a hobby. I had enough things that what I do at home, fancy work, and I usually had flowers and something that besides just cooking and scrubbing.
I think you're known for all of the flowers you grow, aren't you?
Pardon?
Aren't you known for all the flowers you grow in your yard? All the geraniums and the petunias? Usually you have your yard full of flowers in the spring.
Yes, well.
Snapdragons and nasturtiums?
Well.
What are your favorite flowers?
All flowers are. Something like that, what Melvin said. He said, why do you women fuss so about arrangements? Why do you have to have a big bunch of flowers? He said, just as I can see as much beauty in one rose as I can in a big bouquet. He said, sometimes it's overdone by having too much the same thing. And I can see there's common sense in that. If you like flowers, if you can't have a dozen, you can see just as much beauty in that one flower. It's some people like a lot of things, and other people don't need so many things to enjoy it.
How many quilts have you made in your lifetime?
Oh, I wouldn't hazard to guess. I think it must have made 25 or so just for the family here, you know. And I in the crib, I guess I made a lot for the orthopedic hospital, many of them, when I've gone to the orthopedic.
You belong to Quilting Club now, don't you? Or
yes.
at church?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with those quilts?
They're all, that's a charity in a church. The Lutherans have done that for years. They got the same thing in Cooperstown and the same thing in Great Falls. And the Lutheran churches shall have that, women have that organization. You know, we make over 100 quilts a year, you know, and then we send quilts by the ton, you know. And then we have other things too. We make homemade soap, and we make school kits for the children, and for cleanliness kits, you know, toothpaste and soap and stuff. And then all the beautiful little jackets they've been. One woman knit 36 in 1 year. She was helpless, and she did those pretty little jackets for the babies, and beautiful, just as beautiful as any you see in a store. But the trouble is they can't, you know, they can't take care of them or anything, but they love them. But they aren't practical either, like heavy knit wonders, you know. Hey, here I am. Look at me, that's it.
You're writing a letter?
Taking notes or what? Spread it on the table.
That's kind of comical, you know that. You'd have, actually really should writing a description or something. Well, probably she wanted to give a note, get a note.
Vanessa? Tell me how to write Vanessa. Good, she did it. I'm trying awful hard.
She just likes to go around with her hand up. Walk around.
Yeah, that's the way. Would you like to have it? Wait, we'll take this cushion off. Now you can put it on there. There. Oh, you pretty near fell down and boom, didn't you?
Grandpa Melvin, he wrote some stories. Didn't he write some books and some stories?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, am I too?
Well, I just wondered what the names of them were.
The Escape to the Land and what was the other?
Haunted Island?
Yeah, Haunted Island.
Yeah.
Haunted Island was the first one. That was a juvenile story. And Escape to the Land was, it's more of the area like the Dakotas where the electrification was developing on the farms and just telling how it changed the lives of the younger generation that started farming.
Didn't he write another story also about fishing or something, but it wasn't published, but he wrote another book?
Yeah, well, he's written a couple of stories, but he just write them and he didn't even send them in because he just didn't have the time to.
When he did his writing, he did it on an old typewriter. They weren't electric, was it? It was
No,
just an
real old typewriter.
real old one.
And Underwood.
Well, Grandpa Melvin would have been passed away 20 years ago in next November, right?
Well, Dad would be 75 years old, you know, now. You can figure from there, too.
He'd be
I meant 95, not 75.
95 now, and let's see, his birthday was in summer, in June.
In June.
He would have been 95 in June.
Yeah.
No.
He'd be
96.
He'd be 96.
96 in June.
No, he wouldn't. He'd be 95 in June.
He's born in 1898, and then this is 1994, so you add 94, 95, 96. Wouldn't he be 96?
Yeah, I'll be 97, and he couldn't be 96. He must be 95 now.
Isn't he only 1 year younger than you?
Well, he was 10 months younger.
Oh. So you're gonna be 97.
Yeah.
So he would have been 96 in June.
96.
Because he wouldn't turn 97 before you turned 97, would he?
No.
Yeah, he turned 96 and then you turned 97.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We're just figuring ahead of both of us.
Yeah.
You know, a year and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, he turned 96 in 1994. Oh.
1996 is now subtract, well, 98, and he died in 74. How would that be figured? 74 from 96 would be how many years he's gone.
About 76. He's
No,
been
no.
gone 20 years, but he would have been 76 years old at the time he passed away. Was he 76 when he died?
Well, that seems like to be more like it.
About 76 when he died.
Yeah.
Almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was sick for most of the time he was retired. Did you say he was sick?
Well, he wasn't in good health. Melvin wasn't in good health for years because it seemed to me that he just bought 8 milk and machine. He had bought, well, when we were married, his stomach, he had trouble with his stomach. He always had that, never an appetite. And a very small eater, and he very careful with the diet too, but he wasn't a good eater. He had trouble. He used to get those lumps and stuff. And he didn't drink or anything. I know that, so it was just his stomach. He didn't have...
Did he have ulcers?
Well, he probably did. But he said he remembered when he was a kid when he'd work or something would bother him, he shocked him like that. He said he always just vomit and vomit. So it may be just weak stomach too. And he always was skinny. You know.
You're going to tell me about some of those things on the farm that we didn't talk about, like the canning or threshing or some of the activities?
They had, what do they call it? Not butcher. A butcher, it isn't party, butcher what, when they gather.
Bee? A bee, like a
Butchering bee.
quilting bee, or?
Butcher, it'd be butchering bee, yeah, I suppose that's when the neighbors, next door neighbor or some friends get together and they'd butcher a supply of meat for several months. And that usually mean an animal or two, and then that neighbor would go to the next neighbor, and that he'd go to the fellow that had helped him at first, and they'd butcher the animals at the next place.
So you really had to get to know your neighbors when you lived that way, didn't you? You knew your neighbors pretty well.
Oh, yeah. But
compared to today.
Oh, the neighbors were so sparsely settled and they were closer. There was never anything that ever happened that you didn't know about, and ours that helped. That was the way the people used to be old times. Their neighbors meant more. Of course, they gossiped too. This is none. It is.
Can you give us some good gossip now, Grandma? Mm-hmm.
Well, they would sharpen their knives and butcher the animal, and then they would make the sausages, and they'd make several kind of sausages, liver sausage, the meat sausage, and sometimes they'd combine both the beef and pork, and just many different kind of sausages. And that was just an awful lot of work. A lot of cutting and sorting the roasts and everything, getting every part of the animal cut for the part it's cooked for.
How about smoking them?
Well, then that's the sausage making process. And they cut all the fat from the carcasses, and they would render the lard. They never bought Crisco or shortening or oil for shortening. And they'd have many 5-pound buckets of lard, because that lasts the year round, you know. That was all kept cool, and they had the year's supply. And they would cut those in little, about inch square cubes, and put it on the stove and fry it real slow. And after all the fat is boiled out of the fatty cubes, then they had a press, and they put the crackles, they're called, the fat when it's rendered, it's crisp and quite dry. So they put that in the press, and then the lard, the lard comes through the press because it's vessel is full of a lot of holes, and that comes out just clear like water. Put that to cans and seal the cans, and that gets hard, and it'll last. They usually outrun out of the supply before the year's over. Now they put that meat up at the first real cold spell in fall, because they didn't have refrigeration then. And then all the meat that is for the roast and the different steaks and things, they would wrap up and freeze real hard, and put it in boxes or barrels and cover it up to keep it from
How would they freeze it?
animals getting into it if they didn't have a building put in.
How'd they freeze it?
Well, they just, it's cold and freeze hard, just like
From the
in
weather
freezer.
outside or something?
Yes,
It's so
and then
cold?
they'd cover it up good and keep it cold that way, because the ground was all frozen and there was ice or snow that they put around their barrels, this third barrel. And then they made liver sausage, and of course that's from the pork, and head cheese, and
What's head cheese?
well, that's the meat that's gotten from the heads when they dress that up, you know, and take the cheeks and different parts. And of course the tongues were always saved too for the pork and the beef. That was considered, they would treat that, boil it, and then most of them pickled tongue. And, oh no, they bake summer sausage from the pork, from both pork and beef. But the pork, they always cured the hams and the bacons. And that's really a long process. They'd trim them to shape, and then they would put them in barrels of brine, and they'd have to stay in brine for several weeks. And after it's penetrated the hams and bacon, then they would take them out of the brine and put them back in the barrel and pour fresh water on them several times to draw all the salt out of the meat, so it would, because otherwise it'd just be like solid salt.
Sort of like corned beef?
No, this is ham and bacon that's treated that way. And then it's dried off real well, and it's hung in a little building where they build a fire to create the smoke, to smoke the hams and bacon. And that takes several days. And they got to be very careful that the fire that creates the smoke is covered, because sometimes the meat will accidentally fall off of the place where they have it hung, and they'd have to watch out for fire, you know, if that grease would get a fire where they'd have. And they always had a little smokehouse for that. And Dad made a brick smokehouse for Mom just 2 years before he passed away. So that must have been about 1909. And that old smokehouse is still on the old home place, just as good as it was when it was new. And you can faintly smell the smoke in that little building. They use it for a little storage now, different things like they'll store the screens in the summertime or storm windows, this thing that they just put away for a long time. That's all to say about that, I think. Of course, the sausages, they really were a job for the men. They'd have quite a large tub and make large batches that would last for a couple months. And but the liver sausage Mom always canned. They mixed the liver sausage and then hot packed it. It's meat, you know, it has to be. And some of the pork chops, these are fried down and put it in an open crock after it's fried, and then pour the fat from the pork, which was fried, and that seals it, because that just is solid lard then. And that'll last into the summer. And the summer sausage, that was something that was really a hard job, but oh, that was just wonderful meat.
Did you have chickens?
Well, then Mom canned a lot of the beef, cut it in chunks, and then in summertime, when they didn't have fresh meat, well, they just open the jar and put a little butter in and heat it, and they have brown gravy and beef, and that's really good, tastes good too. It's a good treat for a change. And chicken, they can chickens in the same way, in jars.
A lot of work.
Yeah. Then of course Mom had a big job of canning all the fruit, many crates of pears, peaches, you buy blackberries, and cherries is usually the fruit she got at the market, but otherwise they could buy some, you know, that like blackberries or something like that, they could just pick, and plums, they had wild plums, and also choke cherries. They made a lot of gel out of choke cherries that they just bought down along the river near home.
Your family was from Prussia or Germany.